sweat and my rust. I'm breathing in the chemicals. I'm breaking in, shaping up.
And I took a little road trip this Sunday morning, and I stopped to grab a coffee, and you can't help but notice the sky is entirely blue. It's actually almost not even a pale blue. It's actually almost a normal sky in every single direction. Not a cloud in the sky until you get to the sun. And then there is a mat of white sitting in front of the sun in every direction. If you go past the sun, you can see the sky is completely blue in every single direction except this large white mat. Now this must be the solar shield that Harvard was talking about. It appears they've already started it because, again, there's only one giant cloud in the sky and it's directly in front of the sun. It appears that they're running electricity through it based on the pattern that I can see, and yet people still don't see this. People deny this, or people just don't think it's a problem. They're saving us from global warming. The sky is entirely blue in every direction, east, south, north, and west, except right there, directly in front of the sun. It's almost 10 o'clock in the morning. The sun's just coming up. If you look beyond it, the sky is totally blue. This must be solar shield right in front of us. So they're blocking the sun, they're poisoning the water, they've modified all the food so nothing is natural anymore. It's absolutely, it just blows me away, and there is no outcry. Believe it or not, people, we need the sun. That's why it was created. And scientists are now blocking it out with nobody's consent. You don't hear about this on the news. The government doesn't tell you anything about it. They actually deny it until now. I mean, I can't stress this enough. Look around. The sky is entirely, completely blue in every direction until you look at the sun. There's one giant cloud that is clearly man-made right there. Unbelievable. People need to start waking up their friends and family. We need to cause a ruckus, or we'll just all go quietly into the night. One of the two. That is not a natural cloud. That is some sort of a synthetic fiber that stays in the atmosphere, and it appears that they're running electricity through it, probably using HAARP, High Altitude Auroral Research Project. Unbelievable. And I'm the only one looking up. People just don't care. Nobody cares. They're poisoning us with vaccines, medications, fluoridation in the water and our food, and now they're going to openly deny us sunlight. So much for human rights. Time for a revolution, folks.
Raise my flag, down my clothes. It's a revolution, I suppose. We're painted red to fit right in. Whoa.
So they're blocking the sun, they're poisoning the water, they've modified all the food so nothing is natural anymore. So they're blocking the sun.
I don't know if this is true or not, that some scientists are trying to figure out a way to block the sun to try to slow down global warming.
Yeah, it's a measure of the feeling of desperation that some of them feel.
Are they really thinking they could do that?
Well, some of them are seriously proposing, and I think it's completely nuts.
Yeah.
You know, you put another kind of pollution, sulfur dioxide, up to orbit, cover the atmosphere. The sky won't be really blue in the way it is now anymore, but it would block out some of the sun's heat so that we wouldn't have to take the difficult steps to stop spewing all this global warming pollution into the atmosphere. And of course, there are a lot of problems with what they're proposing.
You could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a kind of ugly tech fix.
You can spray something into the atmosphere to change.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
How do you do this?
You'd start with a fleet of modified business jets and say 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year, and each year you have to put a little more, and this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in
No,
emissions.
we'll get to it eventually. But in the meantime, we're shrouding the Earth in sulfuric acid.
So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid.
We put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, but it'll be better if we put more in.
We're talking about 1% of that.
1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down,
Okay.
but it's a tiny addition to what we're already doing.
Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the end?
It actually turns out to be an old idea. This was
Really?
known since President Johnson.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them. Maybe all those planes with the contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now, and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
Seems extremely unlikely.
That the United States is not telling something to its citizens? That seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper. I think they might have your idea already.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HAARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed. The Air Force has maintained the site for other government agencies to use for several years now. And with DARPA completing their project, that's our last government customer that we have in the site. We have put out a call for other agencies that had interest in managing the site or taking it over, and including going out to academia.
International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Programs are impacting microclimates needed for our crops to survive and needed for pollination. The other issue is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather an undefined term at this period of time. And so what happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere in what they call geoengineering schemes to reduce, supposedly, global warming. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production not only here in the United States, but worldwide. What you're seeing now, a lot of times many scientists know, especially at NASA and in other areas, that the skies that we're seeing are not normal cloud formations. These are man-made. In California, the State Department of Health drinking water tests were examined between 1970 and this year, and we found unusual spiking in barium, aluminum, strontium, manganese, and all of these spiked at the same time in various drinking water supplies across the state of California and also in Arizona. So what's happening with these atmospheric tests is that aluminum, as one example, gets into the root systems of our trees, and it looks like the trees are dying of drought, but they're not. Many of our forests in Redding, California and other areas are dying from warmer temperatures produced by persistent jet contrails, also impacting tree health and crop health. They know from scientific studies back in the 1970s that they deplete beneficial ozone in the atmosphere by releasing nitric acid.
I conducted air sampling, I conducted soil sampling, and I was getting high levels of these contaminants. When I started asking the question again under a new commander, I never in my life thought I would have somebody look me in the face and tell me, "Is there something wrong with you? You've been looking really depressed lately. You know I can put you under a mental evaluation for up to 120 days. Who would take care of your daughter?" Because I was divorced at the time. As soon as I heard that, I knew. It validated everything I ever thought. And I thought, I've spent 9 years of my life trying to protect human health, and here we are, violating law after law after law. Just sitting here, instead of protecting the people, we are poisoning the people. And you ask yourself, if this is true and we are spraying the people, where are the pilots? Where are the people? I don't know if you pay attention, but look at Snowden. Look at Manning. People don't come forward because these supposed Whistleblower Act protections that you have are not enforced, they're not supported, and they really don't exist. Geoengineering is occurring, it's been occurring, it is not new, and your tax dollars are funding this. So it is unethical every day for all the other people that are out there that work in preventive health, or even physicians that aren't speaking about this. They need to. The biggest hurdle that we have is disinformation sites. I never say them, but I'm going to today, so that you know if anyone ever gives these to you as a reference to debunk you, it's Metabunk and Contrail Science. Those are two websites that are ran by a government shill named Mick West. He is a computer gaming programmer who tries to tell you about persistent contrails. So somebody who isn't even credentialed in chemistry or physics or ecology, none of that, is trying to tell you that you're crazy. You have to understand that I have met people who used to be purposeful disinformation trolls, as we call them. These people are paid to get you on board to believe a website or an article. So I just want everyone to know and understand that of all things, of all the freedoms that we are losing, geoengineering is the #1 issue that we are facing. Because you can have guns and money and you can have everything. If you don't have food and water and you are dying of respiratory or neurological illnesses, what does it matter? So you've heard about vaccines and you'll hear, about smart meters and you'll hear about other issues. These are all systemic effects. We are getting overexposed to toxins. People will tell you fluoride's in the water, but it's not a lot. It is a lot because you're getting it everywhere in your food, water that you drink, and you're getting it in your vaccines. Our bodies cannot metabolize these toxins.
There's the debate. Is it a condensation trail or a chemical trail, something with an additive in it? And I couldn't bite the chemical trail issue for a long time. Give me a reason, give me a motive. And so I started time-lapsing the sky. And there was this one day where I saw a series of planes go by, but one trail persisted and the others didn't. And as that trail slowly faded away, 2 other planes came along. One hit the exact end of it, and another went through the middle. How could these planes be aware of, or better yet, even be remotely concerned with what's going on with the debris from another plane? And as I time-lapsed the sky more and more and more, and at higher and higher resolution as the technology improved, it was a godsend, because you could see even the little planes were part of the bigger program. So they had to be at a precise place at an exact time to reveal a disturbance in a trail that may have only been in the sky 10 seconds.
It went beyond correlation.
And we're dealing with a massive, massive ballet in the sky.
Yeah.
We've got a program that is loose on the planet and is this guise of climate change, but it is this program we're seeing at work. As I became more aware of technologies, I looked at these clouds, at these patterns with different eyes, with a different understanding. And what I've learned is that these chemtrails help the technology align these patterns, align these vibrational structures which direct our weather today.
When I found out about this first, I couldn't believe that I had never seen it before, because I'm from County Wexford, which is known as the sunny southeast in Ireland, and we have always boasted the highest sunshine hours in the country, and we are also underneath one of the busiest air corridors in the world. When I started to find out about chemtrails, I started to look up and I realized that, yeah, these trails do linger all day, and they go horizon to horizon, and you look to your old photographs and you don't see these kind of trails. So I suppose when the penny dropped was when I saw what in the world are they spraying. That's really when this whole thing kind of made sense to me, because it was explained in a documentary. People knew what they were talking about, and this made a lot of sense. This is a government program to control the weather, and if you think about it, if you want to dominate and control the planet, this is the ultimate weapon to do that. So the Irish media now are normalising weaponised air as a reality that we must get used to. They are blaming car emissions and coal pollution, but there's no mention of the elephant in the room, the hundreds of millions of tons of substances being sprayed into our atmosphere every year, like aluminium oxide, which David Keith and other geoengineering proponents are proposing spraying into our skies. They will never admit these programs are going on, but we know they are going on because 2004, the Civil Aviation Authority in the UK conducted an investigation into cabin air quality, and one of the peak materials found was aluminium. So what the hell is aluminium doing floating around up at cruising altitude? So now Monsanto miraculously have an aluminium resistant seed that can grow in aluminium contaminated soil. Why would they have such a thing unless they knew of a problem that was down the line or already happening? Last year in 2015, a study came out of Keele University in the UK, and bees were found to have had massive high quantities of aluminium in their brains. This is a big problem. We need bees to keep the food chain sustained and to keep it alive. And now Monsanto have recently bought a bee research company called Biologics in 2012. And they have genetically modified a bee that can only pollinate Monsanto crops. And also, this bee is resistant to all pesticides. So why would they want to design such a Frankenstein creation unless they knew of a problem that already existed or a problem that was in the pipeline? Dementia now is the biggest killer in women in the UK. And what's the main cause of dementia? Aluminium accumulation in the brain cells. We are in the fight of our lives. All sources needed for life to exist are under direct attack from these programs. Oxygen, sunlight, and water. Once you know about this, you have a duty of care to get involved. As a caretaker of this planet, we must all come together to stop these programs because we can do it. Once you find out this is going on, you understand that the air you breathe is being compromised. Things don't get any worse than that. You're standing at the end of the plank, what else do? You got to take action, otherwise you are condoning what's going on. Silence is compliance. So we got to speak out.
We're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex.
Dangerous chemicals over us from
Is the government experimenting with our weather?
That's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Millions of tons of toxic poisons released by planes as part of the government plot to affect
So blocking the sun.
The government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail.
Geoengineering. They say it puts poison in the soil.
Tests show high levels of these chemicals in our rain and soil.
Using planes to spray chemicals into the atmosphere to manipulate or control rays.
And that's why health department records show a sharp increase in barium and aluminum in California's water supply.
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
The Army's need to know more and more about weather that surrounds this planet is a vital part of the expanded research program of atomic weapons. We all talk about the weather. The Army is doing something about the weather.
When my kids were little, I used to read to them from Alice in Wonderland. And I remember we learned that the Mad Hatter was mad because it represented hatters of the time, and that apparently the guys who made hats used mercury to turn the fur into felt, and they would breathe the mercury, and it would cause brain damage, and hence the Mad Hatter. And that was in the 70s and 80s that I had my young kids, and I at the same time was learning that we were supposed to avoid using aluminum pots and pans because there was apparently a connection to autism. So that was the first time for me that I made any connection between heavy metals and human health. And then a few years ago, I learned that there was an unnatural amount of aluminum in the soil, and that there was a program spraying aluminum and other heavy metals up into the atmosphere. And so I wanted to check it out. And that's the first way that chemtrails showed up for me. Basically, chemtrails is a geoengineering program where airplanes fly at high altitudes and they spray chemicals into the atmosphere, including aluminum, barium, and strontium. And then those metals fall to the ground and they land in our bodies, on the soil, in our trees, in our food, and in our water. Many people confuse chemtrails with the normal jet contrails. The difference is that the normal jet contrails actually dissipate within minutes, while the heavy metals in the chemtrails cause those trails to persist for hours. And it's not a hypothetical thing. There are 32 states that already have legislation that's related to weather modification. The U.S. agencies that are documented to be involved in it include the U.S. Air Force, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. Department of the Interior, the National Science Foundation, and I know China boasted about using cloud seeding and weather changing before the 2008 Olympics in order to keep the opening ceremony dry. So that this is happening is completely documented. It's just that you have to know where to look because it's not talked about on mainstream weather reports. And this is where it gets controversial. And it's kind of weird because even though it's factual that there are metals in the atmosphere and factual that those metals are falling to the ground, when you acknowledge that or question the legitimacy or the legality or the safety or the morality, it becomes controversial. And really, that's sad because if you're questioning something that has such major impact on us and on future generations and on our planet, it seems to me that it should be one of the most natural and encouraged parts of life and education. So if you're not educated about this issue, I encourage you to do some basic research, and I've put some links at the bottom of this blog to help make that easy. I personally don't know anybody who is informed who isn't concerned, although the range of concerns is vast. For some, it might be that they think that this is a benevolent weather modification program, like putting snow on ski slopes in a bad season, but that it's inadvertently having some negative health impacts. Somebody else might think that the so-called solar radiation management is backfiring because the supposed idea is that you blanket the sky with these heavy metals and it reflects the sun back to itself. However, it's also creating a blanket and trapping the heat in, and so they are concerned about that. Somebody else might think that it's a corporate agenda to get an upper hand on commodities trading by being able to control and therefore predict the weather. And when you realize that 80% of the global economy is impacted by weather, that would certainly give someone an upper hand. Somebody else might just think it's a very sinister plan to sicken people and further control our food supply. The point is that there are any number of concerns no matter what belief system motivates you. And that's significant because I think it both validates the range of dangers and at the same time it informs what we can do about it. Because even for those of us who are convinced that we have a problem, our motivations and concerns vary, and that means that our strategies for engagement also have to vary. So if you want to get engaged in this issue, and I hope you do, I recommend that you first identify what part of this most concerns you. What is your particular passion? Because what we notice is that if each of us is doing the part that we're most naturally passionate about, we can sustain our efforts, we don't burn out, and it turns out somebody else wants to do a part that you don't want to do. And you can check that out at thrivemovement.com on the Solutions Hub. There are tools there to explore what other people are doing and also to explore your own purpose and passion. So currently at thrivemovement.com, we're getting the money and the infrastructure together to create a more enhanced Solutions Hub that's going to make it easier to share best practices globally, to share data and strategies and successes in order to really pull this together and focus on this issue effectively. Meanwhile, you can go to the Solutions Hub, you can find if there's a group in your area working on chemtrails. I went yesterday, there were over 60 devoted to this issue. And you can be doing the homework that we're going to need to have be done when we launch what we're going to do, a webinar, a global webinar, taking on this issue that really shows how to do whole systems problem solving so that you're doing your part, someone else is doing their part, and it turns out that all the sectors are covered. So here are some things that you could be focused on right now, and you can come up with others on your own. You could map out the whole chemtrail network and see who's doing what. You could research the most credible information on what companies are supplying the planes, what chemicals have been identified, what kind of related legislation is there, who's got the patents on the solar radiation management. You could check out the health impacts on humans, on the soil, on food, on water. You could unpack the futures forecasting and commodities trading and figure out who's winning in that market and do they have any connections to the planes or to the chemicals. You could look into what treaties address international toxic spraying. You could draw a poster that would help highlight the issue. You could write a song like Skull did. You could, if you have a high-powered camera, take pictures. You can share the app at the bottom of this blog. If you're a lawyer, figure out what we're going to be needing for a class action lawsuit. You can contribute money to the people and organizations whose work you most value in this. You can share this blog. You can add to the list and post it. The point is, there's something that you can do that we need done. I'm confident that we can stop chemtrails. We need to get informed. We need to communicate and coordinate with each other. We need to be organized, and we need to act effectively. We're going to do what we can at thrivemovement.com to facilitate that. And in the meantime, do whatever it is that concerns you most. It doesn't matter how much that's different from what concerns somebody else. It's that we're all concerned that unites us. So do your part, share what you learn, and keep looking up. Thanks.
I'm waking up to ash and dust. I wipe my brow and I sweat my rust. I'm breathing in the chemicals.